Red brims. What are we doing? Do we have hooks on?
And that was a brim. Oh, that's not a brim.
That's a good jar.
Oh.
Good large.
But
Could be high 40s.
get in the boat.
Nice one.
There we go. Good sized jack there. Oof.
What is up, my dudes? The weather has been absolutely horrendous. We're talking 20, 30, even gusts up 35 knots, rain, everything you can imagine. It's been proper terrible here. And, you know, I was going to go today and try and get something happening before I leave to go down south. But, yeah, it's literally gusting 35 knots today, so that's just not happening. So, what we are going to do instead is we're going to do a bit of a how-to on how to fish creeks, what I do, what I use, that kind of thing. And hopefully by the end of this video, you guys will have a lot more confidence going out there, knowing you're doing the kind of right thing, knowing you're using the right gear, and it helps you guys catch more fish. That's the main aim of this video. Hope you guys enjoy, watch it all the way through, and I really hope you guys learn something. It's almost not a how-to, it's more of a how-I. So I'm just gonna run through a lot of things with you guys. So we're gonna be focusing on creeks and especially more so fishing edges and that kind of thing. Mostly kind of targeting jacks and all sorts of stuff that in the mangroves, you know, as well. You're gonna get your barra and cod and brim and all that kind of thing as well. So I'm gonna put in some actual real life examples, some clips from past videos, so you guys can get a better understanding of what I'm talking about when I say certain things, just so it's easier for you guys to wrap your head around it, and also so you can see some actual fishing action, not to see my ugly mug for however long I'm going to talk for. Okay, first thing, the very first thing, the most important thing to start you off is you need to be prepared when you want to do this kind of fishing. If you're looking to chase jacks and barra and the mangroves and stuff like that, you need to have the right rod, reel, line to, even before you even think about getting in the boat or kayak or whatever you're looking at. There's no perfect rod, perfect reel. You should buy this 100%. This is the best. Everyone has their own little things they like. So yeah, don't get caught up in what anyone else is using, but what kind of works for you. You know, a lot of people, when it comes to rods and specifically rod lengths, that, yeah, there's a lot of people that fish mangroves and stuff that want a, you know, that think they want like a 6 foot or even shorter kind of rod. For me personally, I like longer rods. So if you're looking at like a 6, 8, 7 foot kind of rod, you just have so many more. In my opinion, it's such a more versatile rod if it's a longer rod. This in terms of casting distance and angles that you can get out of having a longer rod just outweigh the advantages that you would have with a shorter rod. That's just my opinion. But yeah, I'm going to show you what I use. So if you've been watching my videos for a little bit, you would have 100% seen this rod, especially when I'm fishing mangroves and that kind of thing. This is it here, the main one that I pretty much use. So it's a 6'8", 10 to 17 pound rod. It's a Dobbin Sierra. Yeah, I find just having 10 to 17, it's got a little bit of a softer tip, so it's much easier for me to cast lighter lures and stuff like that, but it's still got a bit of backbone in there when you get into some of those good jacks or a barra in the snags, or even just cod, really. And you need to actually stop them from bearing you in a snag. You can actually do it with this rod. The other thing, the reel. So this is a Daiwa Zillion HLC. The thing I really like about the Zillions is you can cast such light lures so easily. So it just makes it easy for me. Not a cheap setup to run, obviously. You know, when it comes to fishing, you know, I would always recommend that you get the best you can afford and look after it, because in fishing, you really do get what you pay for. So although it's not a cheap setup, you know, it really does what I want to do with it really well. So yeah, that's why I like it. I've got it spooled with, we've got 30-pound J braid on there. I use this rod a lot for you. Jacks and barra and stuff like that. Like a lot of 30-pound braid nowadays, you're pretty hard pressed breaking them on snags. So you're not going to break them on a fish, especially with this rod. You know, it's a 10 to 17 pound rod. Usually when you're looking at line rating, I'd go at least to the max of your rod, but even a step further. So it's almost a 20-pound rod, so I've just gone 30-pound braid, and that way I know I can fully max out my rod, fully have it. You'll feel when your rod's getting maxed out, you'll fully feel that, and then I can be confident going as hard as I can with the rod that the line won't break on me. So that's why I do that. Okay, next thing after you got that is your leader. Now, leader's a bit of a hot topic. I know a lot of guys down south like to use lighter leader, guys up north, heavier, rada. So, I'd be looking at, if you want to do this kind of fishing, you haven't done it before, or you just want to see what I run. So, what I do, I run, for the most part, here, I run like a 40-pound fluorocarbon. With the fluoro, you know, you get that bit of extra abrasion resistance, a little bit more see-through in the water. The reason I run like a 40-pound is that you have an actual bit of a chance when you're actually hooking small barra and stuff like that. I would never run 40-pound if I was expecting to get, you know, 80 centimeter kind of plus fish. When you're fishing the mangroves, at least for the most part around here, you're looking at 50 to up into the 70s for the 70 kind of centimeter fish, and you know, you still get rubbed off on 40-pound on those kind of fish, but for the most part you're okay. If I was specifically going out and chasing barra and not just trying to go out and catch jacks, I would be using 80 plus pound, and you know, that's it. You know, I'd be using 80, 100 pound. And you know, because I'm not in the business of losing fish, I want to have the appropriate line and everything like that, because you know, especially when it comes to, you know, YouTube and making videos and stuff like that, you don't want to just use stupid light line and just lose fish just because, you know, I'm in the business of putting fish in the boat, so I want to land the fish, so I use appropriate line, and then you don't have to worry about it. Around that kind of area, around that kind of 40-pound is what I find works well for me when I'm fishing the mangroves, and I haven't found it to affect the bites very much at all. Like, I've never really gone, oh, I'm running 40-pound and let me drop down to 20 so I can get some bites here. It's just not like that. I think it's more in your head than anything. But yeah, if you have that confidence that you're using the right line and that kind of thing, you'll be catching fish, so don't worry about that. Alright, so next thing, number 2. After you've got your rod, reel, line, next thing you want to look about is what you tie onto the end of your line. So, we're looking at lures. And I know the question gets thrown out around, what's the best lure to use for this fish or that fish? Rada. There's absolutely no such thing. If you're a bait fisher or whatever and you haven't used lures much, one thing you need to know, every single lure is situation specific. Now, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but there's so many options and variety when it comes to lures, and that's because there's so many different situations in fishing that you need to have a variety of lures or you can't get the most out of your day on the water pretty much. If you've got a wide range of lures that can cover different scenarios that you're going to encounter on the water, you'll end up catching more fish. It absolutely sucks when you're on the water and you think, oh, I wish I had this kind of lure or that kind of lure. If I had this, I would be able to get that fish. Or it sucks being like, I can't catch this fish, or I can't fish those fish the way I like to because I don't have this or that. That sucks, and I hate that. So I like to be prepared. I like to bring a variety to kind of cover the bases. So if I come across that situation in the day, I have the right lure to use, and hopefully I can catch that fish. That's the idea behind it. So I'm going to go through the basics on what I generally bring if I'm going out creek fishing for the day. Okay, so first thing we've got here is your paddle towel style soft plastics. We've got one rigged traditional here on a standard jig head, and we've got one weedless rig. So for the most part, I will be using this style of rig. I'll be using a weedless rig. So just so I can cast up into the mangroves and stuff like that and not get worried about being snagged. When it comes to rigging plastics and even prawn styles, there's a few different styles of hooks. This one is standard rig here. So this is a 6.0 decoy worm hook. And what you have on the front here is a little screw. I'll show you in a minute how that works. As you can see, there's no weight on that. And I'll show you in a minute how I change it up. So just so you can see here on this one, I've got a ball sinker rigged up through the loop knot. I'll show you that a bit better in a second. But here, the next thing, we've got screw and you've got a belly weight. So some come with the belly weights, and that's better for, you know, if you want to have it sinking flat versus sinking nose down. And then you've just got your non-screw. I find the screws are much better in terms of actually getting more life out of your plastic, because sometimes with this style, when you get bites from fish, they can actually rip the chin down and you can't rig your lure weedless anymore. What the screw does, it holds it in place longer so you can get more life out of your plastic and catch more fish. Well, the most important thing about these is that you have the appropriate weight on them so that they actually work on the sink. Now, different brands and different styles of plastics will swim different at different speeds. Some work better going slower, some need to go a bit faster. Make sure you always have the appropriate weight so your lure actually swims and it works on the sink. You will catch way more fish if it works on the sink versus it not. So that's why I have the ball sinker on the front of this one, so it actually sinks down and that tail starts kicking and working how it should. And I'll show you an example here of a situation where that worked. Oh, it's a jack. Oh. Oh my god, there's another one right on him. Oh my god. His mate's right on him. Oh my god. I'll just land him. Damn. I'll just go. Go. Nice little fella. And the next thing we've got prawn style imitation. So the prawns are pretty much just as versatile as soft plastic in terms of being able to fish it high or low in the water column. And yeah, these are the Chasebait flick prawns, and they come pre-rigged with a weedless hook with a weighted belly, so that prawn sinks nice and flat like this, so it looks nice and natural. So you can pretty much, between the soft plastics and the prawns, they're probably the most two versatile options, because you can pretty much fish any part of the water column with them. So that's why they are always the first two things that I bring, because you can cover a lot of bases with these two styles of lures. Next thing, this would be probably a lot of people's favorites, is a jerkbait style lure. So the hard body suspending or slow floating. This is a Chasebaits Gutsy Minnow, and what's really important to me when it comes to jerkbait style lures is being able to have good terminals. So split rings and hooks, high quality, strong hooks. So when you're really putting the hurt on fish and those jacks and bar and everything that pulls hard and fights hard, that you have strong enough terminals that aren't going to bend out and break on fish. When it comes to hard bodies, I'll generally bring a shallow and deeper divers for fishing obviously different parts of the water column. The good thing about hard bodies, especially for me, what I like suspending ones. So the good thing about them is that you can twitch them and suspend them in the zone that you think the fish are and hold it there for a longer period of time. Whereas with your soft plastics and your prawn styles, they'll sink and move out of that section of the water column you think the fish are holding at. So you kind of they're constantly moving. Whereas the jerkbait style, you can actually pause it and hold it in that strike zone, which sometimes can really trigger the bite. Between those three, that's the general ones you'll use, and that'll cover a lot of bases, but not all of them. Next thing, we are looking at topwater lures. So obviously surface, probably the most exciting kind of style of fishing. Visual fishing, you know, having a fish come up and hit your lure off the surface is right up there with the best things in fishing. So two different styles here. So you've got frog style soft plastic, which that just floats, sits on the top, little tails working, creates a bit of action. And then the other one I use a lot now is, this is the Drunken Mullet from Chasebaits. So it's a jointed prop bait, so that little prop tail that spins at the back and creates a fizz on the surface, and yeah, works really well for getting strikes and reaction bites especially. And yeah, the frog, and on the other hand, you can run them weedless with those same style hooks that you saw in the soft plastics, and you know, that'll keep you out from getting snagged and that kind of thing. They work really good as well. The hookup rate is not as good as the trebles, but when it comes to snags and stuff, you obviously get snagged less with weedless, but have a higher hookup rate with non-weedless. But you take your own risk. The next thing, besides all those, is vibes. So generally, if I'm fishing edges, I generally have my sounder turned on with side and down scan on. And I have a glance back at it every now and then just to see what's going on the sounder, and in case I run over something cool, like there's a school of fish on the sounder down underneath the boat, down deep, or as I see something on the side scan out to my left or right or whatever, something like a cool bit of structure, or there's some fish holding there. In the deeper water, what's really good to have is some vibes, in case they run up on a school of barra or school of, you know, anything in that bit of deeper water. So these will get to the bottom nice and quick, and if you've never used vibes before, they're called vibes because they vibrate. That's the idea behind them. So you hop them up and down, they send off a vibration, and it's intended to trigger strikes. So that's your traditional style vibe there, and then this is actually a weedless vibe. So rip snorter there. So between those two, you'll be able to cover a lot of bases. I'd be more inclined to use a non-weedless in more open water scenarios, less structure down there to get snagged on, because obviously with trebles and stuff like that, if you're trying to throw that through a tree or on rocks or something like that, you're probably going to get it snagged and lose it. In that scenario, I'd be looking at throwing the weedless, so you're having less, you're getting snagged less and that kind of thing, and you're getting more casts in, which usually means you catch more fish. Now, I just wanted to touch quickly on what I was talking about with the, you know, running the sounder while I'm fishing edges and stuff like that. So I generally have down and side scan running almost at all times when I'm doing that kind of fishing, because you never know what you're going to see. And you know, I can't count how many times I've been doing it and looked at the sounder and I found a school of fish or cool bit of structure like a lay down or rock bar or something like that, and actually fished it and caught fish. So, and you find new little cool spots like that just from that, keeping your eyes open and keeping the sounder on. So yeah, I'll show you an example here of what I'm talking about. We're fishing edges here. We're coming to the split in the creek, and we're going on the deeper edge. And literally, I just glanced back at the sounder and I saw a whole school of fish roll through under the boat.
What are they?
Deans.
No way.
Oh.
Wow.
I only got 40 litre on. Very nervous. Little Dean.
Liftable?
It's not frayed.
No, we good. Chinned him. Got him on the chin. There we go. That's why you're running the sounder. There we go, little Dean there. Oh, yep.
Just as I put my rod down.
Oh, he's not too bad. Do you want to get in the net?
There you go.
Oh shit. Oh, no, no. He's just doing 360s. Potential rubbing here. The dog. Nice. There you go, another bad little barrow there, probably 70 odd.
Yeah, so sometimes it can literally be that easy. It was probably 20 minutes we spent on that school of fish. I caught 2, Ben caught 1, and yeah, would have never have saw him if I didn't have my sounder turned on. We would have still been casting in the mangroves, and we would not have caught 3 barra out of nothing. So pays to have that going. So if you've got a sounder with side scan, definitely utilize it when you're in that kind of scenario. Okay, so just quickly, I'm gonna run through with the lures just some super basic retrieves to get you started. So first thing with the vibes. So generally more of a deeper water, you're fishing on the bottom kind of style lure, although you can wind them straight through the water column. But generally what you do, cast out, sink it down, let it hit the bottom, and then you just do either short little hops with your rod, so short little lifts. So you'll get the lure going hop, sink back down, hop, and on those lifts, every time you lift your rod, it's going to vibrate and then sink down, vibrate, sink down. So you're doing short ones, or you can do long, slow ones. And yeah, you just mix it up. That's one way to use those. There's a million different ways to use every single lure. There's no exact, this is the one technique and this is what works best. It's, like I said, with lures, even the retrieves themselves are all situational. So that's that one. When it comes to the top water, so there's so many more different styles of top water lures as well, you know, apart from the ones I showed you. You know, you got poppers and walk the dog style lures, but for jacks, for the most part, I'll be using either a frog, or I've really started using these little prop baits as well, so these are really cool. And for these, for the most part, literally all I do is keep the rod tip high, so you keep your line out of the water. Sometimes that line will drag your top water lure down, especially if you're using fluorocarbon. So keep my rod tip up high, keep that line out of the water, and it's literally a straight wind. I just straight, steady retrieve, and you will see the prop tail spinning and working and fizzing along the surface, and then the fish will just come up and hit it. And then same sort of deal with the frog, literally rod tip up, straight wind. You just get that lure working along. So you can do twitches and little pauses and stuff like that. That can work as well. Next thing, you got the prawns. So with the prawns, it's pretty much cast it in. You can let it sink down, do little hops and twitches, just darting around like a prawn would, or you can just slow straight wind it. So with the prawns, generally, I'll cast it in, let it sink a little bit, and just do little twitches, and as I'm about to come out of the strike zone, I'll just wind it in. And sometimes the fish is following it, watching those twitches, and you go to wind in, and then they hit it. Or yeah, like I said, cast in, let it sink a little, and then just straight wind it in. Same deal with the plastics. So for the most part, cast in, let it sink a little bit, and then just a straight wind. You just steady, retrieve, straight in, or same with the prawn. Sink it down, you can hop it. There's so many different little things you can do. You know, you can mix it up, work different parts of the water column, work up high one cast, next cast sink down low, next cast hit the bottom, whatever. You can kind of mix it up as you're going through. And it's good to have someone with you as well, so you can fish 2 different styles of lures, fish different parts of the water column, mix it up, seeing what's working well on the day. Lastly, the jerk bait. A lot of different retrieves you can do with the jerk baits. Generally the twitching and pausing is what I'll do for the most part. So you just do short stabs with the rod tip, just straight down for the most part, and that'll just get your lure darting, dart, stop, and it'll just sit there suspended, pause like that. So this is a really good one when you can actually see your structure, and you twitch it and pause it right next to the tree or log or rocks or whatever, and just have it right there in the fish's face, annoying them, and that can really trigger the strikes. I'll show you here exactly what I'm talking about with that.
Oh, it's a barra. Oh, woo. Ass, little twitch. Oh. Oh. Please don't jump. There we go. Alrighty. There we go, that's the lure there. Not too shabby a fish. There we go, just chucked him on the mat. It was like 66 centimeters or 67, around about that. Whoa! Very graceful. So yeah, as you saw there, casted it up current, twitching, pausing, holding it in the zone. It sat right in that sweet spot in the water column where the bit of structure was, and the fish came right out and smoked it. So that's what you want. So yeah, that pretty much covers off the lures for the most part, and that clip there also kind of ties in to my next point I wanted to talk about, which is the actual creeks themselves and also the tides. So when it comes to tides, it's a massive thing when it comes to fishing creeks, because some creeks are completely out of the water on a low tide and also inaccessible on a low tide. And everyone always asks, what do you think is the best tide for fishing the creeks and stuff like that? The thing is, it's different for every creek. So creek to creek, you have different bits of structure that are exposed or not exposed, and the fish will feed at different parts of the tide in different creeks for different reasons. So without getting too deep into that, for the most part, what I'll say is every creek's different. There's some creeks that I know close to the top of the tide, they're much better. Some creeks at the top of the tide, the fish will be too far up in the mangroves, up into the back, and you won't catch anything. And also the other end of the spectrum is too low of a tide, and there's no structure there or anything for the fish to hold on, so you won't catch any fish if they're not there. But with that being a low tide, obviously depends on the creek as well. Sometimes you got low tide in some creeks and there's some really cool structure that the fish will be holding on. Some creeks low tide, there's absolutely nothing. So that's one thing to take in. It's different for every creek. So there's no, okay, run out tide is good in this creek, so it must be good in every creek. That's just not how it works. One thing that is important, whether you've got a run in or a run out, is that you're targeting the pressure side of the bit of structure that you're fishing, if you're fishing the edge. Just 500. So I'm going to use this clip that I'm about to show you as a bit of an example of what I'm talking about. So say the current is going right to left here and hitting this snag on the right side. What you want to do is cast over this side right here and bring your lure back towards the boat with the current along that side. It'll drift in a little bit with the current, so you want to cast depending on how heavy the run is, and you want to bring it back to the boat along that side, because that's the side the fish will be looking on. Vice versa if it's the other way. So say it's running out, going left to right in this scenario, you want to cast over here and bring it on that side back. You'll see in this clip that I have the current going from right to left, cast on the right side of the structure, and yeah, you'll see what happens. Ooh. Oh, what the hell? Nice Jack. He had me buried for a second. He's a nice one. No, come here. Hey, young man. Mid-40s kind of thing. On a little paddle bait there. Can't complain with that. It's a quality one. Oof. Yeah, so I hope you got a bit of an understanding of what I'm talking about there. But I bet one thing that you're saying to yourself is, what the hell? He hooked up before he even hit the structure. Well, number one, you're wrong. Number two, the only reason that I hooked up there is because I could see there was structure down deeper and I was hitting the front side of that first. So, one other thing I probably should have mentioned at the start of the video, something you'll see in every single one of my videos that's very important is these bad boys right here. So I have these on in every single video. It is so important to have a good pair of polarized sunnies. The difference it will make in your fishing is just massive. If I try to fish that kind of thing without polarized sunnies, I would not have caught that fish if it wasn't for having a good pair of polarized sunnies. You need to be able to see through the water and see that structure and even fish at times, and it can make a massive difference. Massive difference. Like, it's hard to explain to people that haven't used polarized sunnies before, and especially a good pair of polarized sunnies, the difference that it makes. Being able to see through the water is such an advantage, and then also it's literally just bad for your eyes to be staring into the glare of the sun and that kind of thing when you're in the water especially. If you haven't already, do yourself a favor, go buy a good pair of polarized sunnies and it'll make a massive difference in your fishing. Alright, so getting back to the creeks themselves. So a lot of people ask, what do I look for? Where do I go? Rada. If you are fishing in Queensland, pretty much every single creek on the border up will have jacks in it for the most part. Obviously not, there might be the odd one that has bugger all. But yeah, what I look for personally is I find that I have a lot more success in creeks that aren't super dirty. So if you've got a system that's super dirty, like proper mud water, that kind of thing, I try and stay away from those creeks. For the most part, if I'm just trying to chase jacks, I'm looking for that cleaner water, which also ties in to the tides and the moons as well. And that all becomes relevant on what part of the country you live in and that kind of thing. And, where I am now, we have fairly big tides. Some tides, they're looking at, 5+ meters. And, if you're on a full moon, 5 meter tides, certain areas it's going to get super dirty. Some areas it's going to still be clean. But then when you come to the neap tides, the tides between the moons, you're going to have smaller tides, which generally means cleaner water. So you can kind of, depending on the area in, you can kind of work your way around areas like that. But it may be a different thing in different areas where they normally have smaller tides. So the neap tides may be very bad. The water may be clear, but there may be absolutely no run. And you need that bit of run when you're doing this kind of fishing. You need at least a little bit of run. If it's dead still, the fishing's usually tough. But yeah, so there might be certain parts of the state where the tide, you need to be closer to the moon where the tide's actually running, and that'll make the fishing better. So it just depends on where you are in relevance to tides and moons and that kind of thing. It's hard to say specifically because it's such a massive thing. Obviously it varies from area to area, system to system. It's too hard to get into detail unless you're talking about one specific creek at a time. So I'll let you guys kind of work out your own systems in that kind of sense, when the best time is to go there, when's the best tide. You just have to learn through experience of fishing those areas to know when's the best time to go there. So yeah, I can't just tell you when the best time is because it's different from creek to creek. And when it comes to the structure itself in the creeks, so generally
I mean, depending on how deep your creek is, obviously it varies from creek to creek. Like I've said 700 times in this video, structure is the #1 key when it comes to fishing for jacks. Anytime you have like trees in the water or rocks in the water, that kind of thing, they're kind of your best zones. Mangroves themselves, they can be good as well, but I find generally the better stuff is usually, you know, near the bends of the river where you've got the current run around, it's creating an undercut bank. All the trees have kind of started to fall in the water. Some trees have fallen in the water and that kind of thing. When you've got stuff like that where the current's hitting it, so you know there's current that pushes through there, so there's going to be your predatory ambush stuff there from time to time, especially jacks. They love that kind of stuff. Same with rocks. You got a zone where they can hide in between or behind, or even sit at the front of rocks where it's kind of a choke point or an ambush point. Sometimes you can find little spots like that just from Google Maps, but then sometimes you just literally have to get in those places and just fish it, and then you'll be able to see it from eye or through your sounder. But in saying that, if you're fishing in a kind of jacky sort of creek, you know, you can get them off any bit of structure. They can even be on sand or mud, anything like just anything. They can be anywhere. So never ride off something, but those kind of things are generally a little bit more consistent in terms of fish being there regularly. But yeah, I think the best thing you can do is, you know, if you're looking to find a new creek, just find anyone you see on Google Earth, Google Maps, however you find them. Go there at the top of the tide so you can kind of suss out the creek and see what it's like. Bring a friend and try 2 different types of lures on and just fish through it. See what it's like. Don't write it off because you don't catch anything the first time. Come back next time, different part of the tide, maybe a different moon phase, and yeah, just keep mixing it up. Keep trying different things. If you mix it up a little bit, different tides, different times, you will eventually find jacks. You will eventually catch jacks. So don't be discouraged if you don't catch them even in the first session or the first 5 sessions in there. It takes a lot of time to kind of work out things sometimes, and then you may find the odd creek that you go into, you smash them every time you go in there, or maybe not smash them, but you catch them most times that you go in there. There will just be some creeks like that. Some creeks just have more, or some creeks just have less. That's just how it is. There's, you know, some creeks look awesome, but there's bugger all, and some creeks look average, but there's a fair few. So you can never pinpoint it exactly, apart from, you know, just experiencing it. So what I'd say, get out there, just go fish them, and you'll kind of work it out as you go. One last thing I wanted to touch on. Again, another thing, probably should have mentioned at the start of the video, fishing on a tinny, you need to have an electric motor. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, I'll just drift around. You need to have an electric motor to get around and fish it properly. To do what I do and fish it properly, it's near impossible without an electric motor. You can even get some cheaper ones nowadays for a few $100. Don't have spot lock or anything, they can just get you around. Do whatever you got to do, whatever you can afford, but it's so important to have an electric motor for this style of fishing. If you don't have one, it's very, very difficult. Also, one thing that ties in with that, and also just fishing in general, is stealth. You need to try and be stealthy if you can. Don't go full speed on electric. Don't drive with the outboard right up to a snag. Don't be stomping on your cast deck. Don't be slamming hatches, all that kind of stuff. That's just more fishing in shallow water and creeks and stuff in general. Stealth is always better. If you can be stealthy, be stealthy. You will catch more fish. If you're quieter on the boat, not stomping, that kind of thing, and also with your electric motor being stealthy. So while you're using it, don't use it flat out unless you have to, absolutely. And also, yeah, if you can drift in zones sometimes, that is really good as well. If you're making no noise, get right in, and that can be the difference of you catching a fish or not catching a fish. So yeah, I think that covers pretty much most of the bases. There's probably some stuff I missed, I just can't think of it right now. If you've got any more questions, or if there's anything else you want to know,
just pop it in the comments down below. I'll try and reply to as many as I can. Yeah, I really hope that you guys learn something from this video, and even if it's just one little thing, you can help apply it to your fishing game and helps you catch a fish, or even just try and think out of the box in different ways to what you normally do and how you normally think. That would be great. But let me know in the comments down below anyway if you enjoyed this video, and let me know if you learned something as well. That'd be really cool. So yeah, with that, hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time, peace.